Luciferians. Lucifer is, basically saying that I am Lucifer, I'm not Satan. All this stuff is here. So we're going to go on a journey about Lucifer, but not really, sort of, kind of. So we're going to lore. The topic for today's lore, it started when I started researching Lucifer. So, and bottom line, there are a lot of different names for Satan. Lucifer Morningstar, like if you've watched, I don't know, Lucifer or Sabrina, or most of those things actually kind of have more of the gist of the idea of what Lucifer Morningstar is. But while I was looking up just to kind of see like, the difference between like where this idea of Lucifer being a fallen angel came from, then I started reading about the Luciferians. And I think because I saw that word and saying it out loud was just really funny for me at the moment. So say it out loud, right?
Luciferians.
Yeah, you're picturing a satanic Bob Marley, aren't you?
Fuck like, yeah, I am.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm just like picturing people like worshiping the devil while smoking a big old spliff and maybe listening to some, good reggae. But so started looking at them, and so the Luciferians, the definition for them, according to the Luciferian I knew I was gonna fuck up that word, Apocrypha, whatever the book, whatever the name of your organization is, and there is a Texas shout out to them. We briefly talked about these guys when we were talking about the Haunting of Spring, Texas, because they were opening a thing there and then everybody got all pissed, whatever. So they have like a really good website with a lot of information about Luciferianism and what it is. But so according to them, it is the ideological, philosophical, and magical attainment of knowledge and inner power via the left-hand path. So I'm like, oh yeah, I love left-hand path, like magic. This sounds awesome. But then I hit on something because I go onto lore hole tangents sometimes, and I read the following. Now bear with me, this is a paragraph, but you can focus, I promise. Stop looking at your phone. Just focus for a minute. I know. I'm talking to the listeners out there.
Okay,
who've
I was
already
like,
gone
I'm
to the
not.
phone, so just,
I'm not.
So, all right. In the 13th century, a group of people called Luciferians attracted papal attention for devil worship. And this time, there can be little doubt that this is exactly what was going on. The Pope sent Conrad of Marburg, a gentleman described as a sadistic fanatic who had been spiritual director of St Elizabeth of Thuringia and had delighted in beating and humiliate her in order to squash the heresy taking place there. So it goes on and on and on and on. And so at the end of this, it goes, at least half a dozen contemporary sources give details of the Luciferians, and confessions by those accused were not made under torture. So naturally, like any logical person does, I really had to go into a deep dive to find out if there really were Luciferians in Germany in the 13th century. And that led to basically a week of rabbit holing and dozens of pages of notes, me reading shit in German. My German is not that great anymore, so lots of Google Translate in German and all sorts of things. And really this ends up being the story of how what the fuck happened in the 13th century caused millenniums of problems that are still going on. So buckle up, bitches. All right, so we're going to the high medieval times. And I would say, get into a time machine, but this is a supernatural podcast, so Cass can just boop us in the forehead. And okay, so we're back. Boop. All right, we're in the 13th century, aka the medieval ages, right? And we're bumping to Gregorian chants. They're all the rage. I don't know how to sing Gregorian chants, but I think it involves harmonies and going but most of it don't know what they're saying because they're in Latin. Velvet's a thing, so we're finally getting into nice soft things. Ooh yeah. All right, so what else is going on? So we've got Gothic architecture, buttresses galore. In monks, there was a fuck ton of monks and friars, and there is a difference between those two, but I just don't care. And anyhow, both the Franciscan and Dominican orders were founded during this time, and they were basically like the vegan CrossFit influences of their time. So to be a good like friar or monk, you had to be like you had to be poor, you had to pursue poverty. You had to pursue learning, and then you had to go tell everybody about how poor you are and how much shit you learned, and then make sure that they all listen to you. So, yeah, they are great. Also in the Crusades, So this is the time where we got to be kind of the end of the Crusades, and where people figured out, you know what? Like, we don't have to just do these Holy Land Crusades. Although the Children's Crusade does happen now. That's the fun one where, all the children died or got sex trafficked. Yeah. But the popes at this time also just realized, well, I mean, they're heretics in the Holy Land. They're heretics here. They got land and shit. We shouldn't have heretics. So I need military. So basically, the church just started building militaries, and those fun times are happening because what else was in was papal power. You see, in 1215, Pope Innocent III, misnomer, had a council meetup, and he issued
if you name yourself innocent. I feel like if you name yourself innocent, that's a red flag. Just saying.
Well, yeah, and he's the third one, and I'm sure there's some Catholic bullshit behind that, but whatever. So he issues like a lot of decrees, and some of the things that are coming out of that are including things like, you got to take the sacraments, like you've got to do the Eucharist, right? You've got to eat the wafer, and you also have to get married. Like, marriage becomes a really important thing, and of course you've got to pay us taxes, because we're doing all this stuff for you because we're at the church, right? Also, we're the boss, and we said that in here, so it's true, right? The boss, us, just Also, confession. So a lot of the problems that were happening in this era, some of the people who were going away from the Catholic Church, and even in the Catholic Church before this, was just like, if you do something, you can probably ask God for forgiveness and you'll be fine. But in this time, they're like, no, wait, no, you have to tell a priest. Like, you can't just ask God. You've got to tell the priest or the abbot or the bishop or the archbishop or whatever. And then
you can ask for forgiveness.
And you can. And also, those people, if they hear you doing something that's kind of not like the best way for the church, they have to tell us too. They also have to do that. So cool. All right. Also, if you are Jewish or a Saracen, can you wear some like special clothes so we can just pick you out? That'll be great. All right. Also in at this time were spiritual ladies. Part of this is because women were thought to be the perfect example of how to be the Christian ideal of like being very obedient and devout because they didn't have shit else to do. Or if you were a woman who was of a different class, you're like, hey, I need to do something. I don't want to get married, or my husband died. I need to go join an order. But then they're like, we have enough people in the orders. And so the women just started making their own shit up. Like, sisters were doing it for themselves. Like, they made up like towns and shit of like all these religious women. And so these women were also, now you have to go to this confessor, right? So they're developing these very special relationships with their spiritual advisors and confessors. And this also becomes kind of a power thing. Like, who's your confessor? Like, I've got the good one.
I've got a better confessor than you.
Yeah. And then, like, if you're a spiritual lady and you get this confessor, and then when you die, if you're really good, then you can be a saint. And then if you're a saint, then you can have a cult. And that was pretty much the goal of like all the spiritual ladies at this time. They want to be a saint. They want to get a cult. And there was like, well,
cult? I'm just saying.
I mean, yeah, who doesn't want a cult? All right, so if all those things are in, what are out? Well, heretics. And if you believe the church, heretics are everywhere. They're just committing the heresy. How dare they? And at this time, there were a lot of groups that had broken off of the church, particularly the ones they really hated were the Cathars. They hated them. They burned down whole cities full of them. Well, the cities had some Cathars in them. Probably.
They thought.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So, like, people are, like, basically being like, we want to get rid of all the heretics because they're against the church. And if you're against the church, then you're for Satan. And Satan, this is all Satan trying to take down the church. Because God cured man, so Satan, this is clearly the work of Satan.
Obviously.
And so, yeah. And so one of the things that happens, too, is, like, the church is going, you've got to, like, these heretics are bad. You've got to get rid of them. So what do people do when they get really riled up and they're told people are evil? People just start doing a lot of mobs and killing people, and it's not
Yeah.
good.
No.
Yeah, it's kind of,
No.
there's some shit going on. All right.
That's not good. Mobs are not good. That's my
Mobs are not good in general. No. So if we go back to that original paragraph, there is some people that were mentioned in there, and this is basically gonna become their story. The first one that is mentioned is Karl von Marburg. And basically that name just sounds like the villain in Ghostbusters 2 that like does the evil slime. That's kind of like how I picture him.
It does. That's perfect.
Yep. So, shockingly, Conrad von Marburg was born in Marburg. Huh. Go figure. And so he was born to what was assumed to be a wealthy family. He had a lot of education. He becomes a priest, just a secular one, as far as everybody knows, like not a monk, but he's still friends with like all like the highfalutin like monks that are running around at this time, and like knows Francis of Assisi and like all the Dominicans, like whatever. And he is said to be a man of much ability, large theological learning, eloquence, and ardent zeal in defense of the purity of Catholic faith and a severe ascetic.
Oh,
Fun.
sounds like
a real fun
great
dude.
at parties.
Totally great at parties. So great that in 1213 he becomes a preacher of the cross for Pope Innocent's crusade against the Cathars. And to be chosen to do this, you had to have a special appreciation for the law of poverty and ascetic strictness and like really good or like rhetorical skills, rhetoric skills, not rhetorical skills, but it's something else. But anyways, but even with then that group of like narcs and like nerds, he was special for like how much he loved his preaching and how much he loved to show people how poor and pious and that's, everyone loves someone who shows off like how poor they are. That's always so good. So yep, he keeps on giving sermons and he becomes a papal arbiter. And speaking of the papal people, let's bring in another pope. So Pope Gregory the Ninth. So we're just gonna call him Greg because it's a lot to say. Basics on him: he was born Ugolino, Count of Segni, somewhere in Rome, sometime between 1140 and 1170. That's a wide range of dates, but whatever. His uncle was Pope Innocent III. So honors and some family stuff is happening there. He does begin his papacy in 1227, theoretically when he was 80. And a lot of places say that, so let's just believe it. Also, he was a lawyer and didn't like all the chaos that all the heretics, like the mobs are causing. He wanted the heretics to go away, but this was just like, it was messy. Too messy for me. It was messy. All right, so we're going to meet our last player that was in there, and that was Elizabeth, and also, a.k.a. the St Elizabeth of Hungary, a.k.a. Princess Elizabeth. Ooh, as much as I want to be a princess, not this kind. Her parents were King Andrew II and Gertrude of Hungary. Okay. She was born at the beginning of the 13th century. Also just sounds like a bundle of joy. As a child, she was full of humility, piety, and sacrifices. And I would also say a lot of the things that we talk about her come from the things where people were trying to get her to be a saint. So I'm not sure how much of this like was written just to be like, no, of course, like even as a kid, man, all she did was pray. She loved it. That's all she wanted to do. She just wanted to pray and fucking hug lepers. That's it. That's all she wanted to do.
So weird hobbies for a child.
It is a weird hobby. And so as a kid, she gets sent to the court of Thuringia, which sounds like the place in Princess Diaries. But this is actually central Germany. And that's where like Bach and Liszt and Wagner. So a bunch of like music people come from there. So eventually I guess it becomes less of an uptight place, maybe. So they get married when she was 14, and apparently they were really in love. Like he even went to the bat for her when his parents were like, well, there's a better match for you. And he was like, no, I love her. And so they knock out 3 kids together. And so she marries him when she's 14. So she just starts popping out babies. And so she turned, like you do. And so when she's 16, the Franciscan friars come to Thuringia, and she is obsessed. She's just like, look at how poor these guys are. Love it. They're so, like, all they do is pray, and they just want to help the poor. Love it.
Into that.
totes into it. So such a good look for them. And so she just like moves in with them, and her husband is okay with this because he thinks it's adorable. He's just like, oh, we'll get to hang together with heaven. It'll be great. And so she's just like, yo, this is not like, I am not like on the level I want to be. I need my own confessor. And so she goes to this one monk, Rodiger, and she's like, can you instruct me in practicing chastity, humility, and patience? And he is like, no. It's just like,
nah.
I think he just thought she was too much. He was just like, look, you can live like a Franciscan. Like, that's fine. Just keep being like Francis. Like, that's cool. But you need to find somebody else. So she's just like, oh, I'm not going to be great. I had to go back on my confessor tender. So she's just like swiping left, just looking for a confessor. And so I'm not sure how eventually the situation comes to be. There is some situations that Pope Greg introduced Elizabeth to Conrad. Others that he met Ludwig, her husband, while he was crusading. But no matter, they two find each other and a fantastic toxic relationship begins. And Conrad becomes her confessor. Oh. And so there was a lot of back and forth about his treatment of her, like whether or not it was abusive, because she literally asked for it. Like, literally, it's like, I want to be like so pious, I want to be obedient, but he's a dick. So like, this is like, and she's just like, also like, I'm gonna like be clear, she's full of herself, or at least according to the saint thing. So she's just like, yeah, like if I suffer, then I'm like Jesus. And yeah, that's you're pushing a little hard there. But just an example, it's a lot. Like, if you ever just like, I am like Jesus, like, or whatever religious figure I am like, insert religious figure.
I mean,
here.
I feel like you're not being super humble when you say something like that. Just throwing that out.
But Jesus suffered anyhow. So this is like how much of a dick Conrad is. So he's preaching a service, right? And so they're at this court. And her husband's still alive. She's still, and he is like preaching a service, and her sister-in-law shows up. So she doesn't go to his sermon. He sends her a note that says, I don't want to be your spiritual advisor anymore. Because she didn't go to his fucking mass.
Huh.
Yeah. But
that's like passing a note in junior high saying, I want to break up with you.
I want to break up with you. You didn't return my call. I texted you 5 hours ago. Why didn't you look at your text messages? What are you doing? I don't want to be your boyfriend. But of course she's like, but you're the only confessor for me. No one else is as pious and as poor as you are. So she goes and she begs, and she throws himself at her feet. And she's
never
like,
beg,
please,
girl.
please. And he is like, okay, fine. But you and your maids need to strip down to your chemises, and I'm going to flog you. Oh. Then we'll be fine. So he beats the shit out of her and her maids.
Oh, he enjoyed
and this
that.
Also, like, her and her maids becomes a theme of like getting the shit beat out of them. So he's teaching her,
getting sucked in on this bullshit.
Yeah, these poor fucking maids, man. Like, and no, it gets worse. Like, seriously, these poor maids. And because these also, like, a lot of these maids have been with her, like, I mean, like, when I say maids, it's like your handmaidens, I guess, and like, so they like went to the court with her. Like, they basically raised her. Like, her parents are in fucking Hungary, being like the king and the queen or whatever she is. So they don't have time for her shit. She's done. She's in Thuringia. She's someone else's problem. So she was with the maids, right?
Yeah.
So this is all happening at the same time while he's working at her, like trying to make her into the obedient woman that she should become. He's also like gotten into preaching against heretics. Really, really like him. And he's just like, this is my bag. Like, oh, everyone's evil. And he's like so like intense that Pope Gregory is like, hey, I like this. You should do more. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you authority, right? So now you get to accuse people of being heretics. Oh, you don't get to be their judge. Like, they have to still go to like a court and the judges and prosecutors to deal with it. But you can point out who they are. Cool.
There's
right?
just not a flaw. There's no flaws in this system at all.
There is no flaws in the system. And remember, Greg is a lawyer and he wants order. So he is going through like laws, he's making things, he's trying to make understand what's going on. And he is like, look, okay, we need to figure out who these heretics are. We can't torture them. But how do you really define torture? I don't know. Like, it's kind of like, that's subjective, right? Like, I'll know it when I see it. And so he's like, but once they are confirmed, then you have to burn them with fire. And because it's fire, then, yeah, we're not going against, the ancient prohibition of shedding of blood, thou shalt not kill, because it's fire, like, so there's no blood.
Right. So that's how
being
that works.
Burned. And
exactly
then, yeah, exactly how it works. Then Gregory appoints the first papal inquisitors, and this is the start of the motherfucking Inquisition.
That's fun.
It is, and that was such a joyous thing. Like, it is. Nobody expects the Inquisition. Oh, not the Spanish one, not the French, not the German one. So this is the beginning. There is the French and the German Inquisition. Spain and Italy are coming along. They'll get there, but this is really the first time that the church says you can kill somebody for not believing in what we tell you. And it's not even what we believe, like, because half the time they don't know, like, just anything can make you, like, a sinner and a heretic. So, but if we decide that, then you can die.
Yeah. Which is
not a good thing to say.
Fucked.
So, all right. So, in the meantime, Ludwig dies. Oh, he goes on a crusade and he gets the plague.
Like you do.
Plague's a bitch. Yep. So, Elizabeth's in-laws just toss her out. And they were just like, we are tired of your shit.
Go be poor on the street, bitch. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Well, she wants to be poor on the street, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, bitch, you want that bad?
Yep. So she does basically, though, become the full-on property of Conrad, right? So he's like, fine, come in. She's like, all right, I'm going to take a vow. She's already taken one vow of obedience to Conrad, but now she's going to take another one. And she's now like, I'm going to renounce all the splendor of my world. I'm going to give all my will to Conrad and to God. And I'm going to renounce all my possessions. And then, wait, what? That was Conrad. He was like, wait.
No. I want those things. That's why I'm keeping you around, bitch.
All that money you have, like, oh, well, we can't just, like, what? Like, where is that going to go? It's like, let's build a hospital for the poor. And so she's like, oh, cool, lepers. And there's all sorts of stories about who,
she likes lepers.
Like, she really loves lepers. And there's a story, and it goes back and forth on whose bed it was in. The one story is that Ludwig came home from, like, crusading or whatever Ludwig does, and she had put a leper in his bed, and he was very upset. And of course, you don't just put a leper in somebody's bed.
No, that's right.
I'm sorry, you ask about that, and I understand. Yeah, like, look, man, be charitable, like, care for the sick, but don't put a fucking leper in my bed, like, with their body parts falling out without asking me. Like,
I have a question. So, I mean, I feel like, and I don't want to be insensitive, because I do know that leprosy does still exist. Obviously, there's colonies and people that have this.
They don't really go to colonies anymore, although there are still leper colonies that exist.
Yes,
there's a few of them. They're very few. They're down to go on. I will not go into
what I know
about
I feel like
colonies.
Leprosy is kind of in the same category of like quicksand in my childhood concerns of things that I have not encountered nearly as much as I thought I would. Like, I'm just saying, like, I didn't think I'd encounter a lot, but like, there's like, it's like, what? Oh shit, like leprosy is really fucking scary. You really got to avoid that shit. Oh fuck, how do you get out of quicksand? Like, it's kind of in that category in my head for some reason. I don't know why, but I feel like it's not something like in our modern world we encounter a lot. That's
do you
but
know
you
how
felt
to
like
get
feel
out
like
of
it's like
quicksand?
well, you don't fight against it. You have to get like somebody to pull you out slowly. It's the whole thing.
Okay.
But I'm just like. But you know what I mean? Like, things as a kid that you like thought that you were like really concerned that we were gonna be encountering a lot more in life.
That is not one of the things I thought I was gonna encounter.
Well, not a lot more. Like, I really didn't think there'd be that much quicksand in my future. But I was like, well, shit, I gotta know about this. And then like, I've never seen quicksand in my life. But like,
well, someday that may come in handy.
It might, I guess. I don't know. It's just like it's in that category. I'm like, yeah, this is not something that we really encounter on a regular basis.
Yep. Okay.
Oh, that's what I got. Sorry to derail.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Nope, no
Lepers.
worries. All right,
Lepers.
so lepers. So basically, everybody says she was totally happy to do this. So he is like, all right, come to Marburg, and she's like, cool, going to Marburg, gonna build my hospital. Also, get rid of your children. What? Okay, you can't have children because you love them too much, and so they are distracting you from your obedience and your worship of God and Conrad. So we got to get rid of your children. Cool. Also, we got to get rid of your maids. Yeah, we got to get rid of your maids. You love them too much. So now you're going to live in the shack. And you're going to live in the shack on my land. We're going to get you some roommates. The first one, this is a deaf and angry widow. She is angry all the time and she's just going to yell at you. Also, here's a religious virgin. She's going to yell at you about all the household chores that you don't know what to do. She's going to berate you. And I'm like, girl, you were in a cult. Yeah. You were in a goddamn cult. Somebody told you to get rid of all your shit and then got rid of all your stuff. You're in a cult.
But why didn't he just so he got rid of the maids? Like, that seems wasteful.
Because now you don't have to pay them.
Oh, well.
And you have to feed them,
or
whatever.
Feed them, or house them, or whatever.
She has the deaf angry widow.
That's true.
She's fine. And everyone, just like I said, everyone says she was really happy to do this. But also, she's an abusive, toxic relationship. Yeah, like, no doubt. And this is Conrad being a dick. So she's like, hey, I'm going to go to this convent where one of my kids is at. And so the nuns at this convent were like, hey, Conrad, can she come in? And he was like, sure. Then she got home and he was like, why did you enter the convent? Then, in order to make her repent, he got his friend and friar, Gerard Letzel Kebab. Actually, his name is Letzel Cobb. But I like calling him Letzel Kebab. I don't know. But he was just like, you need to beat her. And her maid. Because her maid opened the door to the convent. Oh. So, got a very long rod, beat the shit out of them. And, like, basically for weeks, like, you could still, like, see all the, like, where they were, like, beaten with this rod. Yep, pretty shitty Conrad. Conrad, you're a dick. All right, so remember, this is the guy who is looking for heretics. So this is how he's treating the person who he's like in charge of her spiritual guidance.
And trying to be super fucking pious.
Yeah.
The person that,
Yeah. And I want to admit, like, Elizabeth was not fucking rosy all the time. In fact, she was kind of awful when she wasn't putting lepers in bed, which, as I stated, is also bad. So, for example, there was a girl named Hildegund. And she had apparently amazing hair. And Elizabeth figured out that based on her good wardrobe and her bitchin' hair, that she was way too frivolous and forced her to have it shorn. And while she was screaming and like begging to her, like, not cut off her hair, and other people were like, why are you cutting off her hair? So no, she just did it anyways. But later on, Hildy becomes a nun and she works at the hospital, and she's like, I was obsessed with my hair. If I'd cut it off, I would have been a nun way earlier if I hadn't, had that pretty hair to go with. And I'm like, no, you got a fucking complex that someone shaved off your goddamn hair, and then you just ended up working in a hospital. That's what happened. You should be able to have your glorious hair, Hildegund. Like, nobody. Look, there's also stories of, like, Elizabeth beating a woman because the woman didn't, like, want to, like, go to confession and take the communion. She just beat her with a cane. That's old lady.
Excessive.
It is. And I can also just picture, like, this is, like, old, like, German bitch being like, fuck you. Like, I'm not going to confession. Like, I'm going to sit here and drink my beer and eat my sausage. Piss off. Like, fick dish. Yeah. So, anyways, this all goes on, and then she dies at 24. Because if you starve yourself because you're trying to be fucking poor and pious and, like, don't give yourself, like, velvet, and you, like, wear little gray, like, little tunics that aren't made of shit, you're gonna get sick, and if someone's beating you, you're gonna die. All right. So she fucking dies, and her body is laid out for 4 days, and instead of stinking, she emitted an aromatic scent that revived the spirit. Cool. That is a very interesting thing to say about a corpse. But then people, so they cut off pieces of her tunic, her hair, her nails, her ears, and her nipples. Her nipples, man. What? Too far, Karl. I don't know if it was Karl. I'm just assuming it was Karl. You went too far, Karl.
No.
Also, like, what? How does this even happen? All right, so the corpse is lying out, right? It's on this table, and you're coming, you're like, oh, she was so great. She was such a great lady. Let me just pull this down and just take a little nip with me.
No, I mean, that was probably after they took the ears and the other stuff. They're like, well, fuck, what else can I take, man? Well, shit, I'm taking
like,
I guess a nip. I guess a nip.
I guess I get a nip. Like, this is what I do. Like, so, and these things do become relics, right? And they're in various churches around the world. I have no idea where her nipples ended up. If you are in possession of St Elizabeth of Hungary's nipples, please let me know immediately. Like, find whatever way you guys.
Nipple hunt 2022.
Show me where those nips are, man.
Show me the nips.
Show me the nips.
No, please don't send us pictures.
Don't send me pictures of your nipples.
No.
Unless they're glorious nipples. Like, I don't know. Like, I can't say I don't want to see them, but I do. Anyhow, all right. So, like, you know, is her fantasy. Karl starts campaigning to make her a saint. And eventually Gregory does. He makes her a saint, and he even grants special indulgences. So this is part of the thing that's happening at this time, right? That's why people are going on crusades and other stuff, because the church is like, look, when you die, for all the sins that you did, you've got to sit in purgatory. Like, if you don't go to hell, you got to go to purgatory. And you've got to be in purgatory for a certain amount of time because of the shit you did. But if you do things we like, we can knock some time off of that for you. So if you go to Elizabeth's tomb, you get a year and 40 days off. Whole days. That's great. And they're like, bargain. And this also lends her way to starting the cult of St. Elizabeth. She got a cult. Yay! She really does come like an important figure in terms of like women saints. Just mainly because of where she was at in terms of time. Like I said, right. The spiritual ladies are really big. She's one of the big saints that kind of comes out of this. But, and you know, of course, like she has her miracles, because you've got to have 3 miracles to be a saint. Like one of the ones she's known for is like, I don't know, it's something to do with leopards and a dress. And then like she opens it up and there's like flowers on it. I'm sure it had something to do with leopards. It always does. But anyway, so we still haven't found the Luciferians. And I'm sorry to say that's going to have to wait for another episode, because this has gone on for a while. Oh. So we are going to do that in season. It will be in season 5. It'll be episode 3, because we have something else for the next episode. So, you got to turn in for 3, and I'll make sure you come back, because there's 2 words. Cat anus.
Those are the words that you think are going to draw people in?
What? You hear cat anus? Do you not tune in? You want to know what the fuck I'm talking about,
don't you? I know what you're talking about, but I don't know also, I don't know if those are the words be like, I can't fucking miss this. Like, I don't know if that's my reaction.
Is that the teaser video that I'm going to put like on our Insta? Like, that's the story. It's just going to be come for the cat anus. Oh. Look, okay, as some of you know, well, nobody on this podcast knows, but Diana knows. I was told that I'm becoming famous in the next 2 weeks. Yes. And I bet it's because of cat anus. There's nothing else I would rather be famous for than cat anus. My words. All right. So let's have Cass is gonna boop us back from the high Middle Ages. We're gonna put her velvet away. Things like now, that. What he says is, look, I'll be the first to tell you that this little crusade of yours is nuts. But I do know a little something about missing fathers. And crusades. Well, fuck. We need to go back to the crusades. Because there is a story I promised I would finish.
Oh, yes.
It's time for some cat sadness.
You've been promising.
I have been promising.
For lore.
And I have been promising it's lore. Say that I promised you cat anus, and then I started listening to catching up on last podcast on the left's series on the Salem witch trials, which is fantastic. But I got very upset because they also talked about the cat's anus. And what's really weird, based on the time that it came out, was probably the same time we were recording this. So there is a synchronicity in the world where everybody decided they were going to talk about these particular cat anus. All right. So Cass is going to boop us back. We've got our velvet back on.
We're not going to poop for a week.
We're not going to poop for a week. Probably with, like, we're in the high Middle Ages.
So I'd rather not anyways. It's fine.
Yeah, you're going to be, like, in a garter... I don't even know if garter robes were a thing, which those were the holes, like, in the castle walls that were kind of like the porta potties of the time. But for the most part, you're probably just pooping in a hole or throwing your shit out the window. Anyways, okay, so not pooping is great. We got Gregorian chants coming on. Remember, Elizabeth has died. But now that she's dead, Mr. Conrad has some extra time just to spend on chasing those pesky heretics. So it's 1231, and Pope Greg has condemned the heretics that they be punished by the debt of hatred. Oh. So the debt of hatred means that you would be put to death, and all your family and supporters would be excommunicated and also lose their civic rights, including the right to hold office, to make a will, to get an inheritance, or to basically have access to any legal systems. So this is what's happening to once you get accused and condemned, right? Fun. And even your children and your children's children are would see a result of this. So not great. Pope Greg decides that Conrad needs to get the full power of a papal inquisitor. And so this is the first one in Germany to get that. And basically that releases him from the obligation of following procedure. And he just is kind of given the advice of just do your best. I mean, try and stick to, what we said you're supposed to do, like within our laws. But, I mean, use your judgment. Right. And, so you can't do this work by yourself. You need to get some assistance, right? Finally, I've been, torturing all these people by myself. Who am I going to get? All right, so he's going to get Conrad Dorso, who is a Dominican lay brother, and a guy named John. I'm sure John has the last name, I didn't see it. But they do note in many sources that he was one-eyed and one-handed. Both of these men are described as ignorant and fanatical. Okay. But they also have just a special ability to determine who's a heretic just by looking at them.
Oh, that's not terrifying at all.
All right, so say you do get accused, right? And they're like, Diana, you are worshiping Satan. So you're not going to get a lawyer or any kind of defense, but you do have the option of confessing your sins instantly or facing the flames. Or you could confess and still face the flames, but you may have a better chance. So you do have to show that you're repentant by naming the other people, which is the traditional world of witchcraft. You have to name your friends.
Accusations, for sure. You have to have people doing it with you. You weren't doing it alone.
You can't do this by yourself. No one worships Satan by themselves, right?
It's a group activity.
Conrad and his folks now, he's got his buddies, and they're just burning lots and lots of people. But I think we have the main question we still haven't answered, which was, were any of them actually Luciferians? To which I respond,
no, I thought it was where are the cat.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But the Luciferians question, honestly, the answer is a fuck if I know. Because most of this shit is in really old German books, and nobody translated them all for me. There were definitely heretics in Germany, and according to Jeffrey Burton Russell, there was one group called the Brethren of the Free Spirit, and they were in northern Germany, and they were making the church very uneasy with things. Basically, it's like, I don't need the church to be saved. And they also had the philosophy that urges to lust, greed, or other so-called sins should be fulfilled as soon as possible, since they come from God. And the only evil is to resist these feelings. So basically, they're like,
So they were hedonists.
Hedonist is like one way of explaining. Basically, it was a hippie movement of the time, and there are lots of these hippie movements. Which is, you just think it's a cycle that runs through the world, right? Things were really bad, they sucked, and so cults become. Obviously, St Elizabeth wanted her own cult, but there's all sorts of other cults that are popping up. They did have some things that were questionable. So they thought that, since they came from God, once they were initiated, they were the same as God, and that then they were incapable of sin and all things were permitted. They also thought that virginity could be restored by sleeping with like the members of the sect. So, for example, if a group of them had sex with a woman, then the last person she would bang would be the holiest one, because then he would restore her maidenhead and she would become a virgin again.
Huh.
That sounds healthy, right? Right. So also according to,
That's all I got.
According to Russell, like he names actual Luciferians that were in Germany in 1227, who he said had orgies underground because sin didn't count below ground. Like above, like if you're up in the streets, like it's sinful, but if you're underneath, then it's fine. In 1230.
Sinful in the streets.
In the streets, or something in the sheets. Also in 1231, the Bishop Thierry, Thierry II, did condemn a woman named Lucardis, Lucardis, which also is also been spelled Lucardis. And she was burned at the stake after she claimed that Lucifer was wrongly thrown out of heaven and that he should be restored, which is a lot of the premise of Luciferian thought, right? And apparently Conrad is one of the people who exposed this sect. So this may be one of the Luciferians that he brought out.
Okay, an actual one.
There also, I did see one author say that he was investigating a sect of Luciferians and that, quote, the confessions he extracted were apparently made without torture, but under the threat of death if the victim did not confess. If these confessions were accurate, the Luciferians were full-blown Satanists. And seriously, an academic wrote that. He was just like, look, they weren't tortured, but, they were told that they were going to die. But if they were true, then they were actually Satanists.
That's some logic.
Yeah, that's a lot of hoop. Anyhow, all right, so a couple years go on, Conrad's just torturing away, and some people are starting to get concerned, but they didn't want to say anything because he was the Pope loved him so much that they didn't want to piss off the Pope. So most of the people were just like, this is a little bad, but I don't want to, I don't want to lose my standing. But then Conrad does send a report to Greg that a Count Heinrich von Steen is leading a sect of Luciferians, and he rides a crab through the air.
What?
He rides a crab through the air, which is awesome. And so many questions, like, is
I'm totally picturing the crab.
But also, is it a big crab or a little crab? Like what size of a crab is he riding? Is he just like? Is it like a Roomba?
It's a little crab. He's just like.
It's like the shark cat, but it's just like it's Conrad. It's a count, and he's just like on this little crab, just
sitting on it, swinging his feet.
He also tells Pope Greg that they are all toad and hangover worshippers. We'll get to the toad in a second. And they kiss animals and have sex with them. And they meet in dark rooms. Oh, so this count is riding crabs and kissing animals and fucking them. And the Pope is like, whoa! All right, so he follows that up with the Vox and Rama, which is a very important decree that sets the stage for a lot of things that are come. But that translates to a voice in Rama, which is a biblical reference to a tribe that means nothing. So within this very official document, we get to hear what happens when you join the Luciferian sect as a novice, an initiate. All right, so first, you kiss a toad. And then for some reason, in the Middle Ages, toads represented sexual power.
I just think about having to hose my dog's mouth out because when Kevin puts a frog in his mouth and spits it out, which he's done twice, I have to hose his mouth out because it gets foamy.
Yeah,
because it's poisonous.
So you get the foamy things because some people do bestow their kiss on his hind parts. So some people kiss the toad's butt. Others on his mouth, sucking the animal's tongue and slaver. I did mean to look up what the fuck a slaver was. I don't think I want to know. Sometimes the toad is of normal size, but others it is large as a goose or a duck. Usually it is the size of the mouth of an oven. No. So I'm picturing like a old like wood burning oven, I guess. It's the skinny, pale man with the black eyes. All memory of the Catholic faith is wiped from your memory, which I would like to know if that takes away my Catholic guilt. So I will totally kiss a toad and a skinny. I have kissed many small, pale men. So now I just have to kiss the toad. So once I do that, take away my Catholic guilt, we'll be all set. All right, so after you do that, then you eat dinner. Okay. Then a black cat shows up, and it shows up from behind a statue and disappears. And it's as large as a fair-sized dog, and then everyone takes turns kissing the cat's anus. I told you there would be a cat anus. No. There it is. Mm-hmm. All right, so after you're done licking the cat butt, then you have an orgy.
Oh, and everybody's kissed the cat butt. I don't.
Yeah, and then you make out with each other. You've also you've kissed a toad, you've kissed a man, you ate whatever you had for dinner, and then you kiss a cat butt. Then yeah, no, there was no teeth brushing. So you have an orgy, and then quote, if by chance those of the virile sex surpass the number of women handed into ignominious, what the fuck is that word? Ignominious? Sure. Passions and burning in turn their desires, men commit indecency with men.
Oh, so everybody fucking is what
everybody fucking. If there's more men than women, the men fuck each other. If there's more women, the women also bone each other. It's an orgy, right? Like you don't discriminate during an orgy. You just bone, right? So then the lights come on, and Lucifer comes out of the corner, where apparently he was just watching the whole time.
Like he does.
No kink shaming, Lucifer. Like if voyeurism is your thing, cool. All right, so he apparently has the upper part of his body from the hips, not the tits, the hips, that shines brightly as the sun, but below that, his skin is coarse and covered with fur like a cat. Now, I'm not sure how those two work together, because how can you be coarse and also have cat fur?
That's weird. I don't know.
I don't know. Then the leader of the group will give Lucifer a piece of the initiate's clothing, and then you're in. All right, so I don't know what part of your clothing it gets, but you give voyeur in the corner gets his trophy to smell later or something. There was another guy in Cologne, Germany at the same time who did tell us similar rites, and kind of really has nothing to do with Conrad, but I mean, it was the same time, same country, same cat butt. And this initiate comes in, and you have to renounce the sacraments, and so you're like, nah, not gonna get married. Don't want that. No communion wafer for me, because that shit is nasty. I'm like, those things were so gross. So that's all he has to do. You just have to renounce it, let it up. So they start off once again. This time, you kiss the pale dude first, and then you kiss the toad, but you still have the pale dude and the toad. And so then you get to meet up with your group in a cave beneath a cellar. Again, we're underground. And always underneath a cellar. So there's deep underground, right? Cellar underneath that. Then the high-ranking person pulls down his pants and bares his ass. Then he puts a silver spoon in it. Then the congregation takes turn kissing the guy's ass. I'm not sure. Yeah, if they're kissing the spoon or the butt cheeks next to the spoon, but they're kissing a butt. Then after they get done with that, they all gather around this pillar, and this cat jumps up on top of it because it's a thing that's high, and a cat's gonna jump on that because that's what cats do. Then the cat lifts its tail, and then everybody can come forth and kiss the cat's butthole.
Who wants to kiss cat? Like, somebody wanted to kiss cat buttholes real bad, right?
So either, like, this is my theory. There's a couple of theories. One of them is mine, and that is, yes, some perv just wanted to kiss a cat butthole, and it just took off. I also read that there is a chance that this all started off as, like, a nerd pun, because remember how like I said in the last one, monks were really in, and there are all these monks that were going everywhere to learn stuff.
Yeah.
They think that somebody made a really bad joke about a cat, and then it just took off.
Yeah.
Like, he was probably trying to make a pussy reference, and, like, look at my pussy. Man, it was just, like, fucking Timmy in, like, 7th grade who, like, thought he was funny. And that's how we get to cat's butts. I don't know. That's one of the things. But anyways, like, they're still in it. But so...
Bad game of telephone gone awry.
Bad game of telephone that just turns into people licking cat anus. And so... But after that, then the cat just puts the light out. Because the cat is just like... Because there's a lantern up there, and the cat's just like, all right, thank you for cleaning the area I couldn't reach. And I have a cat. The cat can reach that area quite well on her own. But then it just knocks the lamp off a table. Fuck this. Exactly. Fuck this lamp.
Fuck your lamp.
Then everybody bangs. Because, of course, now you have to have an orgy once you all taste like cat butt. And
person butt with spoon in it.
And also, this one is masculi in masculos et feminae in feminas. So, dudes banging dudes, chicks banging chicks. But I'm also not... They never say what happens to the spoon. Like, is the spoon still there? What was the purpose of the spoon?
I don't know.
Yeah, Pope Greg has gotten these letters from Conrad, and he demands action. Be like Conrad. Burn them all. And he says their pestilence is like an infection, and once an infection has repelled lighter cures, recourse should be had to stronger remedies, and iron and flames should be applied to the wounds. So just basically light the bitches up. So he does that, but while he's like trying to like get people to follow stuff, back in Germany, the trial for the Count has started, and the Count has a lot of friends, and they all they show up, and they're like, no, he's not riding a crab. Never. He's allergic to shellfish. Nonsense. You know, we saw him ride a lobster once, but he would never ride a crab. Like crab.
He's
so,
too bougie
but
for that, he rides lobsters.
And also, but Conrad is like, I don't believe anything you say because you're in with all of you, or you're in with Satan. And the bishops who are judging this are like, you crazy? They don't want to like actually say like, Conrad, you wrong.
Right.
So they kind of like put it aside. But basically the Count is mostly acquitted at this point. And Conrad goes home. And on his way home, some knights run into him.
Uh-oh.
And also Lusa Kebab. Lusa Kebab is there with him. They kind of beat him to death.
Well.
And nobody's quite sure if these knights were the Counts. But nobody's saying they were not the Counts.
What can you do?
What can you do? So,
I mean, you turn into an insane, power-hungry, torturous asshole. I mean, what happens?
Sometimes you get yours. Sometimes. And so he dead. And so is Lusa Kebab. Both of them dead. Conrad does get buried near St Elizabeth, so he gets that for him. And the trials for the Count and his friends do continue the following year. But shockingly, all the charges are just basically dismissed because Conrad's not there anymore. But Pope Greg, he's the last one who's left, and he's very upset. He's very upset that Conrad was murdered. That was his bestie. He loved him. And he's basically curses Germany. He's like, blah. And he goes on to finish wagering the Stedinger Crusade in northern Germany. That basically was heretics who, for all accounts, is basically, they didn't want to pay taxes to the bishops.
Right.
And basically started a revolt against them. And so the bishops asked the Pope to go in on this crusade with him. He's like, no. And then eventually, I don't know how much the Conrad thing influenced how many more times he started doing things, but I think it's certainly probably possibility it did. He does multiple calls for people to join this, and eventually 40,000 crusaders do come, and they wipe out this entire population of peasants, including women and children. Their death tolls end up raging between somewhere between 4,000 to 11,000 people died during this, but basically just wipe out this entire race of working class. Then after that, because that wasn't shitty enough, the next year in 1234, he decides that, quote, the followers of the Talmud shall remain in a state of political slavery until the day of judgment. So he basically just says, I hate the Jews and they should be in slavery. And a few years later, he orders that all copies of the Talmud be confiscated and burned. That results in France, there was something like 10,000 versions of editions of the book that were burned. But thankfully, he was old and he doesn't live much longer, so he fucking dies. Thank God. Thanks, Satan. Whatever. He dies in 1241, but sadly, besides all those shitty things he's done, the main thing he's remembered for is he's the reason that people consider black cats unlucky.
Fucking cat anuses.
Cat anuses.